Knock knock.
Who's there?
It's Cam.
Cam, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. And everyone listening today, as you heard, I'm joined by Cam Hall. He is joining me. We have a really cool connection where we connected recently on Cam's podcast, and we chatted a little bit about being a dad, and that spans across many things. The quick B-roll before podcasting and all the other stuff that comes in before that, which we just experienced. So, and we had an amazing conversation about parenting, being a dad, and lots of things that aligned so nicely between the two of us, and we really connected on a lot of stuff. And I was just, as soon as we literally hung up from that podcast recording, I was like, we need to talk again. Let's make this happen. So here we are. And you have a real mixture of stuff. Outside of being an educator, you've also got Dad's Making a Difference, which is the podcast that I was very fortunate to come on and share that experience with you. And then the Dad's Making a Difference Mastermind, which is all aligned, which we're going to no doubt dive into today on many levels. But what are we going to kick off talking about is Fight the Dad Bod and dad bods. And I have my views on what dad bods are, and I actually made a post about this last week. But what you're the founder, and now, correct me if I'm wrong, the creative director.
Yes. So that's a fancy way of saying I've taken a little bit of a step back and have a team, an amazing team that's helping support that. Hey, and so that's because you say creative directors because that's what they do. They come to you and you make decisions, and then they tell you that they don't think it's going to work, and then you get to have a creative conversation. So it's good.
Awesome. I'll remember that for when I want to take we're just talking about taking the summer off before we hit record, and when I do that next, I might just shift my title a little bit and I'll just hand it off, and I'll be the creative director. I like that. Okay, I got it. Mental note. So tell us about, I know people are listening, are like, oh, Fight the Dad Bod, and we're going to dig into that, but tell us a little bit about, I guess, where that came from, and what it is that you do at Fight the Dad Bod.
Okay, so I think you need to know the background story for it, but before you understand where the name came from, and before you send me messages and tell me how I'm being derogatory towards dads and I should be accepting of all body types. And yes, I am accepting of body types. And I want to just preface this by saying Fight the Dad Bod isn't so much about a body, it's about a mindset. And so when I grew up, I was always an active guy. I was part of teams until I was in university, until I had to move. Okay, so I was in university, I was playing basketball, and my educational path took me to another city and another university where I no longer could play basketball. And I had a really tough time identifying who I was, because for so long I was always on a team, and I was surrounded by 14 other individuals that we were forced together on the first day of training camp, and that's where we belonged. And we didn't really have much time to get outside of that. And what happened was I was 23 at the time, and I wasn't playing anymore. And I moved to a new university, and I really had a tough time identifying who I was as a person outside of my athletic ability and my physical features. I was always like Cam, the gym guy and a fit guy. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're double training every day for 4 years, because that's what your scholarship's telling you need to do, like that's what you do. And that's a byproduct of that. But I started to identify myself with my physical, my physique and how I looked, and pretty fit guy, being, 6'5", being 6'5", 225, and in pretty good shape. And so I dove into that very shallow mindset as a 23-year-old, 24-year-old young man. I dove into that. Just wanted to get the most ripped as possible. Okay. And so what this set up was a really dangerous relationship with training. It set up a very dangerous relationship with food. This continued for about 4 years. That's 27, 28. I had now graduated from university. I had already had my first teaching job. Like you said, I was an educator. And so I started teaching 2007. And I just couldn't balance like the eating with the working out. And my wife was away at school for a time being, but I was like eating nothing but chicken and carrots and broccoli every 3 hours. Like I would be the guy who had the containers in my golf bag on the golf course. And I remember being in the cart with my friend Rob and my watch going dee dee, because this is before iPhones. That's how old I am. And so this is before iPhones, and my watch would go up dee dee dee, and then my buddy was like, "What are you doing? We're like on the 8th hole, and you're pulling out barbecue chicken and carrots right now. Like you need to get." But I was like, I looked great. I felt terrible and I was miserable and hangry and was short with my then girlfriend, now wife, and it had a really dangerous relationship with food. I actually lived that way for about 2 years. Kim finished her schooling. She moved in and she's like, you need to change. Like, you need to get a handle on this. This is not healthy. I can just see it's not healthy for you. You're not happy. And so here I was. I had attained this like physique that I thought would get me more acceptance. It would get me more, well, humans were motivated by status. And that's what I thought at that time as a 27, 28-year-old guy I was after, but it wasn't. I was looking for health and I was looking for happiness and I was looking to settle down, and Kim and I were engaged and we're excited to get married and those things. Well, fast forward, we got married. And my wife, she kind of kickstarted this. She's like, you need to get right. And she had a background in nutrition. I had done a kinesiology degree, so I had some, classes of biochem in there somewhere where we talked about nutrition. And she really made a plan for me. She says, you need to start doing this. Well, all of us know, if you're listening to this, that your spouse is great there to support you, but they're they're a terrible accountability partner. Not because they don't want to hold you accountable, but because you've heard it before and they love you too much and you love them too much to really make it work. And that's the power of coaching, right? That's why I always encourage people to reach outside. And so at this time now, you fast forward a little bit, it's 2012. Kim and I have been married for just over a year, and we had our first child, my daughter Maya. And it's crazy to think that she's 10 already. It's gone by in a flash. But at this point in time, also, I was doing a master's degree in leadership. I was still an educator. I had moved into an assistant principal position in an elementary school. And so I was balancing all these things. And when Maya was born, I just couldn't balance the demands of being the husband that I needed to be and to be the father that I needed to be. Like, I'm sorry, no matter what someone tells you on your first child, like Kim and I, we were both pretty fit university basketball players, and we're like, we'll just accept this baby into our life and we'll do all these active things and nothing's going to change. We couldn't have been more wrong. Hey, so, fast forward 9 months and all the time crying babies, and baby needs to be fed and can't get to the gym. And like, so you get out of this like regiment and this routine, and you start doing like quick, easy meals, fast food, more stress, less sleep, more anxiety. Like, it just builds. Well, after Maya was born, I put on about 28 pounds in 6 months, and not the good kind. Like, people who didn't really know me, but knew of me, who saw me, who were acquaintances, thought this is ridiculous. But they thought, well, Cam's just bulking, which I'd never done. I'd never gone through that whole, stage prep thing. It's not my deal. But and I would just pass it off of like, oh yeah, what it is. But I'd go home and I'd look at myself in the mirror, and it wasn't so much about how I looked. It was the poor relationship I had with self-image and the shallow relationship I had with self-image that had changed my mental health, and I was struggling. I went back to starving myself, back to chicken and rice and carrots. I went back to doing all these little tricks and diets and fads that, man, you name it, I did it, trying to get back to where I was. I managed to take the weight off. It took me about doing all that stuff. It took me about a year. And then we had my son, and then, a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, Braylon was born in 2014. And so the problem was those quick fixes and those diets didn't teach me habits. They didn't help me understand my body. And so what happened was, quote unquote, like my wife said, you relapsed, but I ended up putting all the weight on plus more in a shorter amount of time. And I was miserable at work, miserable in everything. Well, I don't want the story to get too long because I know we're on the time. But what happened was I met a guy. His name was Mark McDonald. He's a fitness and nutrition expert in the United States. And Kim was going to a conference. My wife was going to a conference, and she wanted to wait in line. He was the keynote speaker. My wife had started a brand called K-Fit Mummy at the time, which was for moms on their mat leaves to bring them together to do outdoor boot camps. So it was a pretty cool thing she had going. And so she wanted to go to this conference, and it was in Vegas. And I was so miserable in my job and everything else. I'm like, I'm going, I'll support you. I'm going to Vegas, baby. Let's go. Like, anyway, we go to the conference. Last day, Mark's the keynote speaker. He's closing it off, and he's down, and everybody's lined up to see him. And he's a hugger. He's giving everybody hugs. And Kim gets to the front. She's, I don't know what to say. I'm like, just introduce yourself. Well, just give me a sec. I said, hey, hi, Mark. My name's Cam. This is my wife, Kim. We're from Lethbridge, Alberta. And she has a brand called K-Fit Mummy. He looked at her. He's like, you're K-Fit Mummy? I'm so pumped to meet you. Like, big hug. We got to connect. And then he gives me like the double slap on the shoulder. You know, that guy, he was like, you're a big guy, but it looks like you're not very happy. I'm like, who's ratting me out here? I just met this guy. He's like, but we're going to get you on track. Well, fast forward, he taught me like how to eat, when to eat, what foods to eat, how to manage it as a busy dad, how to put it all together. And I was like, and I lost the weight. I lost the weight in 6 months, and I kept it off. And I've literally kept it off for the last 10 years. 8 to 10 years, right? And so it's been amazing for me, but it wasn't so much about the weight. It was about the lifestyle. We started eating the same foods as a family. I was eating the same times as my family, my kids. My kids have grown up eating this way. It's about fueling your body, food as fuel and not as a tool to lose weight. And so, 2015 rolls around. I'm feeling good. It's been a year after I met Mark, and things are awesome. 2016, I'm sitting, this is the ironic piece. I'm sitting in a pub with my buddies after a men's league basketball game, having nachos and a beer, because I still was able to have my life and enjoy it and know that I was eating properly and I could enjoy these things. And so I'm sitting there, and buddies around me, athlete, we're all athletes. Hey, like if you've ever played sport, you're an athlete your entire life. You think it's the older I get, the better I was. But all these guys who used to play ball together, and one of them kind of pats his stomach, and he goes, "I'm just giving it to the dad bod." And I was just, I don't know what got into me. I was like, dude, F the dad bod, right? Like, and then I left that pub, and I was like, that's kind of catchy. And without being profane, like, what I obviously said, but I was like, that's catchy, but I don't want to be offensive. But I like F the dad bod. I like Fight the Dad Bod. So that night I went home, and I'm like online, it's 2015. I'm like buying every domain and social media account I could find, Fight the Dad Bod. Hey. And I just started posting what I did, like what we were eating as a family, our adventures in the Rocky Mountains, hiking together, being active together, living fit, healthy, and fulfilled together. And it just blew. And man, a lot of people started following. Guys, like, people follow, people leave, and that's what it is. There's a time and a season for you in someone's life. And I think as coaches, we need to recognize that. But by 2018, I was coaching people online, and we've been coaching men ever since to live fit, healthy, fulfilled with their families. So in a whirlwind of 12 minutes of me blabbering, that's a little bit about Fight the Dad Bod.
I love it. And the origin stories of things are massively powerful. It highlights the purpose behind things, and I'm a big believer in that. And when we speak to our audience, when it comes with that story, it's not even that it gives it so much weight that it sells it, but it does, right? It kind of cements it in people's mind. And so many people listening, whether it's a dad in your life, it's your partner, or it's you personally, that story will resonate on many levels. And we've spoke at length a little bit about my journey, and there's so many parallels there. A different journey. I was definitely not a high school athlete, but the disordered eating and the things that come up through that journey, right? And as you said, it's about status, it's about fitting in, it's, and whether that's you're fitting in as an athlete or you're just trying to fit in general, we all have we just align very well on those stories. And I love hearing a bit more about that too. What I want to kind of dig into a little bit now is, and there's a few things that came up that are so important. I got like 107 questions, but we'll start with the priorities. You touched on this a little bit, like because anyone that's been a dad that's listening is like, yeah, I've been, and especially if you are I don't know what the word is. I'm going to probably get all the comments for this, but and the emails coming in. A modern dad. We're going to say a modern dad. Whatever that,
Yes. Yeah.
what it means to me is that you are fully involved, and it's you taking ownership over being involved, but also being given permission sometimes to be involved, because that's a lot of that dynamic in a relationship, especially in the world we live in now. So being a dad that's involved, and like I know you are, there's a lot of priorities that have to overtake, right? And we struggle
Right.
with that, is how do we prioritize? And I'd love to hear about the some of the maybe the scenarios that have come up, or the stories you've come up, without naming any clients' names, but what kind of struggles do you hear when it comes to prioritize, and how do you navigate that with someone that just can't see how to prioritize?
Yeah. You know, often guys will come to me or Fight the Dad Bod and they want to lose weight. And I find that when you ask them why, you can start to get layers down. Right. So it's like, why do you want to lose weight? Well, I want to look better. Well, why do you want to look better? So I'm more attractive to my spouse. Well, why do you want to look more attractive to your spouse? So our sex life improves. Well, why do you want your sex life? Because I don't feel that we're connected. And so it comes from this like layers. Or I want to lose weight. Why? Because, well, I want to be active with my kids. Well, of course you do. I think we all do. But why do you want to be active with your kids? Oh, well, I've seen my dad decline. He's about 25 years older than me. I've seen his health decline. And I think about where my kids will be in 25 years, and I don't want to be there. I love my dad dearly, but I don't want to be there. And so these guys start to get into more vulnerability, I think. And so when you start to peel back the layers, you start to see what somebody's priorities actually are. And I think I found that in my journey. The priorities I had in my 20s and my early 30s weren't the same priorities I had as a new dad and as a husband. You have to shift your priorities. And it's okay to shift priorities in different seasons of your life. For a long time, priorities for me was meal prep on Sunday, hitting the gym 2 hours a day, every day of the week. And, like I look back at that and we chuckle, but that state of mind, I had nothing else to worry about. But then, Pete, you have these little human beings are fully dependent on you. And you and your wife and your partner are doing this together, and you realize that you need to be more present. It's hard to be present when you're lethargic, when you have no energy, when you're not confident in who you are, you're not confident in your body. Maybe you're not feeling healthy. And if anybody who's listening to this, or in Gareth, you'd know the same. One of the biggest feedbacks is people, when they start eating more healthy, more regularly in their training, they just say, I just feel different. I can tell, I can feel it. And they've lived that way for a while. And then if they were to quote unquote fall off plan or relapse or whatever you have, they say, I can feel a difference. Now I know what it felt like before. So there's that feeling. But if we get back to priorities, it's understanding that you can shift your priorities. But also, it's okay for a dad to prioritize his health. And somebody will say to me, Cam, I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to, plan our meals. I'm like, well, why not? Well, because we have this and this and this and running the kids everywhere. I'm like, how hard is it going to be there for your kids and for you to do the activities you want for your kids if you're ill, if you're sick? And this isn't a guilt trip. Like, these are the things that I've seen. And so it's okay to prioritize your health and still balance what you have to do as a dad, as a parent in your household, what you have to do as a professional. Prioritizing doesn't mean you ignore everything else. It just means you make it a priority, right? And then you work it in. So yeah, priorities are really, really important. And can I just touch on one other thing too? Is because people are so often driven by the weight loss side of it. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to lose 25 pounds. Why? Like, it's just a number. Like, what does it signify? And then you get cut into your journey. It's like, I've only lost 1 pound a week. Oh my goodness. And I was a trainer and nutrition coach. Listening to this, you're probably like, well, yeah, 1 to 2 pounds a week is healthy. Like, that's healthy weight loss. Like, it's not going to be 5 pounds a week. But people get discouraged. And then you ask them and you challenge them. Okay, if this is a priority, have your actions met your expectations? Like, if these are your priorities, what actions are you putting in place that meet these priorities? Because if you're not, and they don't intersect or they don't align, of course you're not getting the results you want because you haven't bought in. So buying in, setting your priorities, and making sure your actions meet your expectations are all key in any type of journey, health-wise or professionally or personally or anything.
Yeah, I love that. I love aligning, the actions we take with those, those, however you put it. But, when I hear that, I'm like, where are my values? And I made a lot of difficult decisions in the last few years, and a lot of them were geared around that. And I had to say, what I'm doing, it doesn't line up over here with what values and what are important to me. And, a lot of that was around being a parent, and it's hard decisions, and we have to really be honest with ourselves. And to be honest, us as men, we're not great at that sometimes, not great at being honest with ourselves, right? So
You're
that's
close up.
yeah, yeah, that's really powerful. And I love that we can prioritize, but I also love the way and this is huge. So think about this, even if you haven't got a coach, if you're just talking to you're speaking to your buddies, your other dad friends, is having that conversation, and being able to understand the underlying stuff, right? Like the true reasons, and dig down to that, because it's easy to brush it off as I just want to lose weight. I just want to do this. And I have another great thing, which might, resonate with people listening when people come to me. And this is a conversation you can have with yourself is, much like you said, why do you want to lose weight?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Who do you become? Like, who is that person? Like, if you use 20 pounds, whatever, you got some random number that means really not a lot.
Right.
Who is that person that's 20 pounds lighter? Well, there's someone that can play with their kids. There's someone that can be active. I'm like, great. I'm like, so every time you take an action that supports that person, like you're becoming that person, right? You're becoming that fitter, healthier dad that shows up and that can throw their kids out the water in the pool, and, can, whatever it is, hoik them up on their shoulders when they're tired. Like all those things that are fulfilling as a dad, is think about that person and ask yourself, are the decisions I'm making now helping me become that person?
Yeah.
And that can totally change. It's done it for me and for many of clients and people I've worked with. It's easier than going, well, it's just, I essentially like 1 pound, whatever, I don't really care, right? So understanding that, I think, really, really helps, and that's powerful. You also said one other thing which is really important, because I get this all the time. You mentioned about how when I feel I'm just so tired.
Mm-hmm.
So both of us, health and fitness background, strong. We joked about how when you're in decent shape, I'm going to say probably maybe stronger or maybe leaner than the average person. We do it as a job. It's, you're an athlete, or it's me every day moving. We joked about how, you go somewhere, like, let's have a push-up competition, whatever it is.
Every time.
Yeah. Or something random like that. And
right.
My point, I am getting somewhere with that. My point is that even when you are in good, higher than average physical shape, and you're a dad, we get tired. I get tired. Cam, I'm sure you get tired.
Exhausted.
And exhausted, yeah. And not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as a parent. And we joked about having, testy 5-year-olds earlier before we recorded, is it can be emotionally tiring and all those things. And we get tired, and we're not looking after our health and fitness in the absence of being tired. We're doing it regardless.
Yeah, right.
And what I'd love to hear is, what kind of where do those challenges, expand on that a little bit with, when you're tired, where can health and fitness and, fighting your dad bod or whatever it is, like, how can that align with someone that just says, I'm just too tired, I just can't do a workout at the end of my day, or do a workout when I wake up because I'm just too tired?
I get that feedback quite a bit, right? And there's a difference between being tired because you're doing a lot and being tired because you're not doing anything, right? And so here, let me explain that. You and I are tired, but busy days. Now somebody's listening to this and like, well, Cam, I have busy days too. I get up early, got to get the kids ready. We get the kids to school. I have a 2-hour or 30-minute commute to work. I work from 8 a.m. to 4:30. And then I got another hour. We got kids activity. And they start listing off all these things in their life that are distracting them from prioritizing something, from putting time into their day to prioritize their health. And I get it. You're tired. You have lots going on. But here's the thing. When you make your health a priority, it's not that you're not going to get tired. It's that you're going to recover, and you're going to recover faster. And you're going to manage stress differently, and your body feels better, and it bounces back, and you're more alert. And so even though you're tired, you're more present. And as a dad, at the end of the day, you want to be more present. You don't want to be sinking into the couch, turning on the TV and hanging out. Like there's guys who do that and then wonder why they don't have a relationship with their kids. Well, it's because guys use tired as an excuse. I'm just saying it. Well, I had a client who had an hour and a half commute, who he lived in Arkansas, and he had an hour and a half commute. He was in a rural community. He worked all day in a really demanding job, and he said, I don't know when I'm going to do this. Like, I've never been able to do this before. And so we started with food. And then we started with him going for a walk at his break. And instead of sitting, he got a standing desk. And it was like these little tricks to implementing activity and movement in his day. And then it became, well, when you go watch your son play soccer, what are you doing? Well, I'm sitting on the sideline. Why? Your kid is occupied for an hour and a half. Dude, go for a walk, do some jumping jacks, go like do some air squats, just get moving. If you're self-conscious, find a corner by the trees and do it yourself. Walk through the trees, like just start doing things together. Go for a bike ride with your kids. I can go on and on with examples. Well, this guy, his name's Andrew, went on to lose 95 pounds in a year. 95 pounds just by implementing little things. And once his body felt up to it and he had fueled his body properly with food, he started to realize he had more energy. And even though he was quote unquote tired from work, like we all are, he had motivation to continue going because he started to see 1% progress. And so he would do a little home workout. He would do some assisted push-ups, and it just grew and it grew and it grew until he had carved out 30 minutes in his day where he could just hit it. And then his wife got involved and the little guy got involved, and it was cool to see, right? And it's just taking little steps to carve out these little notches in your day where you can implement physical activity. And food is just planning and preparation. That's all it is. It doesn't take any more time to eat healthy than it does to eat unhealthy. It's not any more expensive for you to eat healthy than it is for you to order takeout 4 times a week. Like, it's just prioritizing it.
Yeah, I love that all links into what we were talking about with priorities, and you know, you summed it up so well, and that's where I was clearly angling to. Anyone listening is like, well, that's what you wanted him to say, of course. You have more energy. You have more energy even when you are tired. So we do these things in spite of being tired, and then we realize, hey, and if you ever think about, and I'll give an example. This is a random example, but it popped into my head. So last night at probably about 2 a.m. I live in a little place called Stouffville, Ontario, and in Stouffville, Ontario, it was all farmland. You know, only a few years ago, you know, maybe 20 years ago. So let's just say the hydro is very much equipped for farmland, not for all the people that live here.
Okay.
So we have a lot of power outages, and what I realized was and it kind of links. Please let me know if you think it's random or anyone listening, but I woke up at 2 a.m. because the air filter went off. So there's no white noise in my room. And I'm one of those people that like, it's too quiet, I can't sleep. Yeah. So I'm like wide awake. And then I was like, that's weird. The night light in the hallway's on. I'm like, that's odd. I'm like, I'm going to go downstairs and see if it maybe just was like the trip, and I'll go just trip the light, you know, the power on upstairs. So I go down the stairs, I look around, I'm like, oh no, the clock on the oven is off. Like, it's clearly a power outage. There's obviously some residual light in this night light or whatever, which is great to know, future reference. Anyway, my long-winded point is that I got up and I moved around. I went down the stairs, I walked about, I checked out like you do, you know, you go downstairs, you go, it's like random mission, you look out the window, see what's going on in the garden. And then I went back upstairs. And although I was tired because I'd been in bed and I was tired, I had a long, busy day, I'm like, I'm now wide awake. I feel like I could get up and do a workout. I could go and maybe I should get up and do something at 2 a.m. because why not? I eventually fell back asleep. However, my point is that even when you're in a state of being tired, which I was when I woke up and there's no air filter on, suddenly I moved my body, right? And Tony Robbins talks a lot about this, right? Like, and that's why if you ever go to his seminars, he has to get you up and clap your hands and move
and breathing and
right. Movement creates that emotion and that feeling, and this is what happens when you work out. Yes, even when you are tired. So I love that, and I think anyone listening that is in that mindset, and I the same as you, Cam. I've had so many people say that to me that I'm tired. I'm like, trust me when I tell you, you will feel more energetic. You said one other thing, which is really important. When your son's playing soccer, why not just do a few assisted push-ups or take a walk? here's another thing that we fall into, this trap, this mentality, which I'd love for you to dig into a bit, and I'm sure you see it, is, well, what's the point of just doing 10 push-ups and 10 air squats on the sidelines? That's pointless if I can't get a full workout in. And I feel like we're like, if I can't eat a healthy meal, every single meal, 3 times a day, 7 days a week, what's the point in eating better? Share your experiences with that mentality, and if that's something that you have some tips on how to navigate that.
Yeah. Well, think about watching your son play soccer. Okay, let's go to that example again. When your son, before he's playing soccer, learned to run. And before he learned to run, he learned to walk. And before he learned to walk, he was couch surfing. And before that, he was crawling. But any point as you watch your child develop and they start the couch surfing and they start to like carefully like reach that arm out and they're a little further from the chair or the couch, and as a dad you're watching like, oh, don't hit your head on the coffee table, right? Like, but you're watching this happen, and eventually like they're cruising along and they slowly take their hand off and they put it back on, and they slowly take their hand off, put it back on, and then they try a couple steps and they fall, and then they get back up and they do it again, and now it's 5 steps, and then it's 7, and then it's like mom's got the camera out and grandma's got the camera out and everyone's like, oh my gosh, look at what's happening. But that whole process is 1%. Like your child didn't fall on their butt the first time and stop, and they didn't go from, oh well, I hope some people's kids did if they're amazing, but didn't go from like scooching on their bum across the kitchen floor to like, oh, I'm gonna walk today, and up they go, right? Like they didn't do that. You can't expect to go from nothing to 100. That's like, you can't do nothing and do 100 push-ups. So why I say do 5, do 10, like do 1 if you need to. Like I've seen these little challenges and I think they're great. Do 1 push-up today and do 2 push-ups tomorrow and do 3 push-ups the next day. And like compounding that, it's not so much the exercise. It's the act of committing to the exercise and what it does to your psychology, knowing that you've followed through on this. Because the more you follow through and you commit to 1% changes, you're going to hit your stride to the point where, all right, wait a second, you know, this workout of the day that's going to take me 15 minutes, it's going to kick my butt, it's going to be worth it, and I can do it, you know? So there's always worth in doing something. You know, if I had a buddy who's like drinking, he was in his plan with me, and you got to up your water intake. That's part of it. Like, you know, eliminate those things that cause bloat and inflammation, but just like drink more water. It's good for you. And he's like, Cam, I'm peeing all the time. And then he's like, I can't work out. I'm like, I'm going to tell you something. Every time you pee, I want you to do 5 push-ups. And he's like, at the end of the day, he's like, Cam, I hate you. I think I did 60 push-ups today, you know, like, and so there's like these fun ways to craft it in, but the compound effect of doing something is both physically rewarding, but psychologically rewarding. But I want to touch on something else. If you do 5 push-ups while your kid's playing soccer, and your son just happens to glance over and see you doing it, what message are you sending? That you're prioritizing your health, right? And we want to raise children who are going to prioritize their health. There's an obesity pandemic right now, right? Like we had just a pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it. I use the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Everywhere you go, you're seeing people at states of unhealthiness that my heart goes out to them. I just want to help them. And maybe not help them in like a helper way, but help them by just educating them so they can make the right decision. That's it. The decision is up to you. I can't do that for you. I can't put the food in your mouth. I can't get you to do the 5 push-ups at soccer practice, but I can help you along the way and encourage you and show you how to do it. But yeah, for those people who are there like, well, what with 1 push-up or walking 1 lap around the track at the soccer field do? It's going to do a lot, because you do 1 lap, well, by the end of the week, you've done 7. You know, if you've done 1 push-up today, by the end of the week, you've done 8. On the last day, you're doing 8 push-ups, where on, you know, the first day of the week, you're doing 1, right? So it's that compounding effect, and every step you take is worth it.
Yeah. Super powerful. I love that. And I'll add something onto that, which, and I think it aligns with the, you know, the example you gave, is think about that. You know, if dads listening that are trying to apply that mindset, again, think back to when your kids are small, or if they're small now and they're maybe learning that process, is how do you react as a dad when your kid gets up, holds on the sofa, takes a hand off for the first time and falls over? What's the reaction? Typically, we celebrate the quote unquote failure.
Yeah.
You do something, you
Absolutely.
fail, and we celebrate it. And then we celebrate them when they take the first step, and we celebrate them when they get on the soccer team, and we celebrate it. Even though they just got on the team, they've not won a game yet, they've not won a trophy yet. We're celebrating every step along the way. And this, for me, is what stands apart everything you said and brings it all together, is that we have to celebrate that, like that compounding effect, that 1% is we celebrate, and we celebrate every time we make an action towards the person we want to be.
Yeah.
Don't celebrate when we become that person. We could be waiting, as you said, you're trying to lose 90 pounds. You're waiting a whole long time to celebrate. Like, celebrate today because you did the push up, and that celebration creates motivation.
But your standard changes, right? You have that compound effect, your standard changes. We celebrate the failure of the first 2 missteps. Well, my son walks around the house all the time, and every time he walks into the kitchen, I'm not like, oh, Braylon, oh my gosh, man, look, you're walking. Like, he's 8 years old. That'd be really weird because my standard has changed, right? So as an individual, you might not celebrate the fact that you have 2 push-ups on like month 6, but on the day 2, that's awesome. But month 6, you'd be like, no, man, I'm going to punch out 20 every hour for the next 3 hours, and we're going to get 60 in today. Like, your standard changes, your 1% changes. And I think that's really important to know as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. So we touched on something else that I think is very powerful. And you mentioned it right in the beginning. And you spoke about how being an athlete, being on that sports team, and the motivation and the togetherness of having that community.
Right.
And I know that, through Fight the Dad Bod and Dad's Making a Difference, is community is also a huge part of this, right? And it's a huge part of sport. And I talk about this all the time when we have our members on, we have anyone on and talks on the show about the power of the community element. And where do you see this maybe stands out within, your community of men that are coming in to train? And how does that affect them when they have others around them supporting that journey, whether it's, consciously or unconsciously?
Yeah. Supporting each other is huge, right? And then that's something I learned from being on teams, is having people surrounding you who have the same mission or the same vision or the same values is important. They don't have to agree all the time. Man, we had some brawls as a team, right? Like, and you get into the locker room, you have disagreements and you work it out, but we were all in it together, and we all had something we wanted to accomplish. And when you surround yourself with other men and women, like, who want you to accomplish something, but want to accomplish something together, it's really important. You mentioned earlier in the conversation how guys will just, be pretty vague, and they'll just spread out things all around and say, I can't do this, and they'll dip a little bit here and dip a little bit there, right? Well, men especially, because that's who I work with. So I'm not trying to discount what women go through. I don't understand their context like I understand the context of being a man. And so men have a tendency to go, 2 inches deep and a mile wide, right? Like, they'll try everything and they'll do a little bit of it and they'll be spread thin. And then they say, I'm busy and I'm tired. Where when you separate from that mentality and you start to surround yourself with people who are committed, you start to find that your focus narrows. And now, instead of going 2 inches deep and a mile wide, you're going 2 inches wide and a mile deep. You get to dig, you get to get below the layers of the things that are holding you back. You have accountability. You have people who are going to have unfiltered conversations with you, which means sometimes they're tough and sometimes they're great, but they're going to hold you to what you said you're going to do. You've communicated your priorities, your actions are meeting your expectations, and your crew is going to help you stick to that. I found with guys through Fight the Dad Bod, conversation pieces it's one-to-one coaching. Like, it's like this on Zoom, right? One-to-one. And the same things always popped up. Guys came in for nutrition and fitness, but these things bubbled to the surface. Things about their family, things about their business, things about their health, things about their community, purpose. They were purpose driven and want to make an impact. And all this came from originally why they were prioritizing their health, and we got to all these other things. And I started to see that, men, they go shallow. And I don't mean like shallow personalities, but men stay shallow because it's safe. Our conversations are surface level. We go with the buddies, watch the football, same conversation every Sunday. Men need a place where they can go deep, a place where they feel protected, a place where they feel that they can be connected and they can be held accountable, and they can hold others accountable, and they can encourage others, and they can be encouraged. They can be picked up when they need it, and they don't want to be, there's times where we're like down and we just want to be down, like, leave me alone. I don't want you to, be here for me. And then a brother reaches out and says, hey man, I'm going to pick you up. This we're going to say a good word today. So let's do this. And so that importance of surrounding yourself with community, it's so healthy for you. It's healthy for you physically, it's healthy for you mentally, but it's also going to, push you further. I have a good mentor who says, if you want to go fast, go by yourself, but if you want to go further, go with a team, right? Yeah. Go together.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so powerful. And I shared this with you earlier, and it's aligning perfectly right now, is when we surround ourselves and we are able to do that, but we have to be able to get to that place where we can go deep in those conversations and those levels of support, is we have to be open and vulnerable enough to sometimes ask. We have to get in like these kind of conversations that we're having now, connect with other people. And sometimes that's hard for us as men. And I always say, when someone says to me, it's hard, I don't know where to find that, I'm like, well, you have no issue when you're in the gym and you need a spot because, you're benching, your max rep. You have no issue asking some random stranger to potentially stop you killing yourself with the barbell.
Right.
But we're not okay to ask someone about, who is it that you're surrounding yourself? What kind of groups are you in? What sports teams are you on? What masterminds are you in? And I'm guilty. I have my hand up. I'm guilty of that too. Like, it's hard to find that. And sometimes we need permission. And quite frankly, podcasting is a great place to get that permission from others, because we're able to connect with so many people, whether you're listening, whether you're hosting, whether you're a guest. So it's given me a lot in my life, and it's given me a lot of that with other men and other dads I've met. So it's really powerful. And just remember, it's as easy to ask for emotional, mental support as it is to ask for a spot in the gym. So get out there and do that. Now, the last thing I really want to touch on is how we've spoken a lot about the health, the well-being, how it's linked to weight loss and, those fitness goals. And, we dug into the kind of aesthetics and the status thing, and all those things are aligned, and they are important to some degree. And what I want to talk a little bit about is how our lives are a little bit of an ecosystem. So we could find those layers of support within our fitness group, or, like, for example, within what we do at the Nock Academy, we have people come in and they're working on their health and well-being here. However, your life's an ecosystem, is all intertwined. And if one area is getting pulled down and pulled back, it's going to do the rest of the other area. So you can be working really hard on this thing, but then what about your career? What about your place as a parent, as a partner, whatever that might be? And it is an ecosystem. And this is where what you're doing, Cam, is so beautiful, that you have Fight the Dad Bod and you're involved in this. But tell us a little bit about Dads Making a Difference Mastermind, the Dads Making a Difference podcast, and how that aligns from a value standpoint with everything else we spoke about today.
Yeah. So like I shared, when I had the one-on-one conversations with guys with Fight the Dad Bod, a lot of stuff started bubbling to the surface, and I started to make notes, because that's what I do. I love to learn from people. Like, even when I'm in a coaching relationship where I'm the coach, I love to learn from people. There's so much that so many ways we can grow just by listening to those around us. And so what I heard was men needed community, that men felt isolated, but they were impact driven and they wanted to leave an influence. And a word that's come out a lot is legacy. And so Dads Making a Difference came from like the synthesis of these things men had shared with me over the process of coaching them for 5 years. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start a movement, a mastermind, a group, whatever you want to call it, called Dads Making a Difference, because men are driven to make a difference. And my tagline, Dads Making a Difference, is making a difference in your family, in your community, or in your business. Like, there's different ways that you can make a difference in your family, like as a father, as a spouse, as a provider, you can do that. In your community is going beyond yourself. It takes a lot for a guy to take a step back, especially when he's busy, and say, I'm going to serve other people. And how am I going to serve? And how am I going to give back? And how am I going to make a difference? Because when I leave this place, I want to know that I've made a difference here. And a difference has nothing to do with finances, but a difference has everything to do with impact and outreach and listening and connecting. And then, of course, we also talk about business. I work with entrepreneurs often, and they want to make a difference in their business. And it starts off financially driven, but then it's like, no, this is the end game. I want this to become something bigger than me. And not so people can look at me that I started it, but so people can keep it moving forward and we can impact more people's lives. So Dad's Making a Difference originated from that. It came actually out of connecting with lots of guys just like you, of bringing men together who served fathers all over North America in different ways. Nutrition coaches, fitness coaches, bloggers, podcasters, guys who own businesses where, dads were their ideal customer, and bring those guys together to network them, because together we're going to make a much larger impact than any one of us could do on our own. And then that's where it started. And so I started like connecting with those men and bringing them on the podcast, because I know that they have value and a mission to share, just like yourself, and could impact someone's life. It's just one person. I coached men for 5 years, hundreds of men. But if Andrew, that one guy who lost 95 pounds, was the only client I served, was it not worth it? Like, listen, like he completely changed his life and his family's life and the trajectory of his family and his son's family because of the year that he committed. So if I look back, I'm like, that one guy, that would have been completely worth it. Right. And so Dad's Making a Difference was born out of that. The podcast is born about bringing these guys together. Some people would call them influencers. I call them impactors. They're just powerful dudes. And so we bring them together. We meet, twice per year. We bring guys together. We meet every week. And this isn't just for, entrepreneurs and coaches. This is for any dad who feels that he is driven to do something larger than he's doing now, that he has a purpose that's not fulfilled. And we keep each other accountable on our physical goals, like on our financial goals and our family goals, our relationship goals, so we dive into all of that. So that's kind of where it is and where we're going.
I love it. That's incredible. And like I said, anyone listening can see the alignment with all of those things. And like I said, I'm a big fan of talking about the ecosystem of life and how we need to turn up as the best version of ourselves in all of those areas. Not always at the same pace or the same speed or the same 1%, but we have to be looking at it holistically, and it's really important. So anyone listening that's intrigued by that, I'll put all Cam's details in the show notes. So you'll be able to find out about Dad's Making a Difference, the mastermind, the podcast. You'll also be able to find out about Fight the Dad Bod. That'll all be listed in there. So you've got one click, easy search, and obviously you can just go search for yourself too. Cam, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, for sharing, sharing some insight and also some tips aligned in that with, that will help someone listening. And I know someone out there listening is definitely taking away a few tips. And like you said, if just one person makes one change, then we've definitely done our job, so to speak, tonight. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you. Thank you for the invite. And yeah, I love what you're doing, and I love your movement and your passion for helping others. And so thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And the last thank you goes to everyone listening. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode. I hope you took away some impactful points. I hope there was some rewind moments, as I like to call them, when we have to go back and scribble a few notes down or just hear that thing again. So I hope there were some of those in there. And if there was, please share this episode with another dad or someone else that you think would be impacted by what you heard today. We really appreciate it. It makes the world of podcasting go around. And while you're at it, if you've got a spare 30 seconds, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, or wherever you listen. This helps to just get the podcast out there to more people. So thank you so much. That's it for today's episode. We appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next week.